Rob Reiner, a legendary figure in Hollywood, lived a life celebrated for brilliance, humor, and creativity. From iconic films to unforgettable performances, he seemed larger than life. But behind the spotlight, the final of his life was marked by tragedy, secrecy, and heartbreak details the public never knew. Until now. For decades, Reiner captivated audiences with his talent, yet in the shadows, his health and personal struggles worsened quietly. Friends and colleagues who visited him in his final days described a man battling more than the public ever realized, a fight that wasn't visible on screen or in interviews. The truth behind his death isn't just shocking. It's deeply human, revealing a side of Reiner that the world rarely saw. Rumors swirled, conflicting stories circulated, and fans were Rob Reiner was a titan of Hollywood, a name synonymous with unforgettable films, sharp wit, and an energy that seemed endless. From his early days as an actor on television to his groundbreaking work behind the camera, Reiner built a career that spanned decades and touched generations. Audiences admired his talent, colleagues respected his drive, and the industry seemed to offer him every opportunity imaginable. On the surface, his life looked enviable. But beneath the accolades and laughter, a private struggle was quietly unfolding. As he aged, Reiner's health began to deteriorate. It wasn't sudden. He had faced smaller challenges over the years, but the pressures of his career, combined with personal stressors, started taking a serious toll. Friends noticed subtle changes, moments of fatigue, brief lapses in focus, and an occasional withdrawal from public events. To the outside world, it might have appeared minor, but those close to him understood that the signs were part of a larger, more serious decline. In the months leading up to his death, Reiner's daily life became increasingly complicated. Tasks that were once routine required more effort. Even meetings and phone calls, activities he once navigated with ease, began to feel overwhelming. He fought to maintain his independence, fiercely resisting assistance, but the struggle was evident. Those who tried to help often met polite refusals or quiet insistence that he could manage alone. His pride, always a defining trait, sometimes became a barrier to care. Reiner's family and close friends grew increasingly concerned. Private conversations about health and well-being became frequent, often tinged with frustration, fear, and love. They knew that his condition required attention, but Rob's determination to handle things on his own made intervention difficult. There were moments of hope, when he appeared to rally, and moments of despair, when it was clear the fight was taking more from him than anyone realized. Despite the physical and emotional challenges, Reiner's creative mind remained sharp. He continued to develop projects, give input on scripts, and offer mentorship to younger colleagues. Work was both a distraction and a lifeline, allowing him to maintain a sense of purpose amid declining strength. Yet even in his professional life, cracks began to show. His energy levels fluctuated, his patience wore thin, and the relentless pace of Hollywood life proved increasingly unforgiving. What made Reiner's final days particularly tragic was the combination of isolation and misunderstanding. While he was surrounded by people who loved him, there was also a gap between perception and reality. Outsiders saw a successful, active filmmaker. Insiders knew the depth of his struggle. That disconnect created tension and sorrow for everyone involved, as they tried to balance respect for his independence with the urgent need for support. As the end drew near, those closest to him describe a mix of emotions: grief, helplessness, and admiration. Grief for the inevitable loss, helplessness in the face of circumstances he would not fully surrender to, and admiration for a man who had spent his life living on his own terms. Reiner's final was not marked by scandal or sensational headlines. It was marked by human vulnerability, love, and the complexity of facing mortality while fiercely clinging to dignity. Sets the stage for understanding Rob Reiner's final days. It reveals a man who was brilliant and stubborn, courageous and vulnerable, loved and fiercely independent. Behind the public persona was a deeply human struggle, one that few were privy to, and that ultimately defined the shocking and tragic truth of his final days. The final months of Rob Reiner's life were defined by a growing tension between determination and fragility. Friends and family watched with increasing concern as his health declined. Yet Reiner's pride and independent spirit made intervention difficult. He had always been a man who faced challenges head-on, relying on his wit, intelligence, and resilience to navigate life. But this was a battle that no amount of skill or charm could entirely conquer. His physical condition began subtly, with fatigue that seemed out of proportion to his daily routines. Tasks that had once been effortless, reading scripts, attending meetings, or even walking short distances, became exhausting. His family noticed his energy waning and his patience thinning. For Reiner, someone who had spent decades commanding sets and navigating the high-pressure world of Hollywood, the inability to maintain his usual pace was frustrating. Yet he rarely voiced complaints, preferring to shoulder the struggle privately. Medical concerns gradually became unavoidable. Tests revealed complications that required ongoing attention, but Reiner's insistence on independence complicated care. He frequently refused assistance or adjustments to his routine, determined to maintain control over his own life. Those around him often found themselves walking a delicate line, providing support without crossing boundaries he had carefully set. During this time, Reiner's emotional state mirrored his physical challenges. Moments of vulnerability surfaced, revealing the toll of isolation and mounting pressure. Friends recount instances of quiet reflection, long hours spent alone, and subtle signs of frustration with a world that seemed to move too fast. Despite this, he continued to work when possible, offering guidance, reviewing scripts, and mentoring younger colleagues. These small acts of engagement provided purpose, but they also masked the exhaustion and internal struggle he faced daily. Social interactions became more selective. While Reiner valued connection, he increasingly limited contact to a close circle of family and trusted friends. The media, fans, and professional obligations, all sources of admiration in the past, were now sources of stress. He avoided public appearances unless necessary, understanding that exposure would exacerbate both fatigue and emotional strain. Those closest to him began to notice the warning signs of a critical turning point. Subtle changes in behavior, skipped meals, difficulty sleeping, and increasing withdrawal painted a picture of a man fighting against the inevitable. Despite intervention efforts, Reiner's desire to preserve dignity and autonomy meant that he sometimes resisted help, even from those who loved him most. The emotional toll on his family was profound. They struggled to balance respect for his independence with the urgent need for support, often feeling helpless as they watched the decline. Conversations about health and care became more frequent, tinged with worry and frustration. They feared the day when intervention would no longer be possible. Yet they also understood that any attempt to impose it prematurely could lead to tension or withdrawal. Amid this struggle, Reiner's legacy remained a source of pride and inspiration. Even in declining health, he continued to demonstrate the qualities that had defined his career: intelligence, creativity, and resilience. But the contrast between his enduring spirit and his physical vulnerability underscored the tragic reality of his final days. Reveals that the circumstances leading to Rob Reiner's death were complex and deeply human. The combination of pride, independence, declining health, and the pressures of a life lived in the public eye created a scenario in which tragedy became almost inevitable. Understanding these final months provides context to the shocking truth behind his death, a truth that blends vulnerability, love, and the bittersweet reality of a man who refused to surrender control. Even when the battle became too great, Rob Reiner's last days were a delicate balance of strength and fragility, courage and exhaustion. Those closest to him describe a period filled with quiet moments of reflection, interspersed with episodes of frustration and fatigue. Even as his body weakened, his mind remained sharp, and his personality, the charm, humor, and intelligence that defined him still shone through, albeit in smaller, more measured doses. Friends and family recall how he spent much of his final days surrounded by those he trusted most. Conversations were intimate, often reflective, and occasionally tinged with humor, a reminder of the man he had always been. He spoke of his life with pride, shared memories that were both joyful and bittersweet, and occasionally expressed regrets but never a sense of defeat. Reiner faced his circumstances with dignity, confronting mortality in a way that was deeply personal and private. Despite declining health, he insisted on maintaining routines that gave him a sense of control. Simple activities, reading scripts, watching classic films, or listening to music provided comfort. Each ritual reinforced familiarity in a world that was rapidly changing around him. For Reiner, these routines were not trivial. They were lifelines, small but significant ways to assert autonomy when so much had begun to feel uncontrollable. The emotional strain, however, was unavoidable. Family members described moments of quiet worry, seeing the toll of illness etched on his face, the subtle tremors of fatigue in his movements and the weariness in his eyes. There were times when the line between hope and fear blurred, and those around him struggled to provide care without overstepping. Their love was constant, yet fragile, like walking a tightrope, balancing support with respect for his independence. Even in these final days, Reiner's wit and intelligence were intact. He could make a room laugh, offer insight on complex matters, and maintain the quick-thinking charm that had made him a Hollywood legend. Yet these moments were increasingly interspersed with long periods of rest and reflection. The contrast between his mental vitality and physical decline was stark, underscoring the tragedy of a life so vibrant. Now confined by circumstances beyond his control, his passing, when it came, was both sudden and expected. Friends and family had prepared themselves emotionally, understanding the trajectory of his illness, yet the reality of loss remained a profound shock. Even in anticipation, grief struck with a force that reminded them how deeply Reiner had touched their lives. The man who had inspired countless colleagues and fans through his work had left an indelible mark not only on Hollywood, but on everyone who loved him personally. The aftermath of his death revealed another layer of the story. While the public mourned the loss of a cultural icon, those closest to him knew the intimate reality of his struggle. They understood the bravery it took to face declining health while maintaining independence, the resilience required to balance pride with vulnerability, and the profound humanity behind a life lived in both public and private spheres. Captures the poignancy of Rob Reiner's final days, the tender moments of connection, the quiet battles with health, and the dignity with which he confronted his own mortality. It is not of scandal or sensationalism, but of love, respect, and the human complexity of a man whose life was larger than any single narrative could contain. The shocking truth behind Rob Reiner's death lies not in scandal, but in the harsh reality of human vulnerability. While the public remembers him for his towering presence in Hollywood, the final of his life tells a story of quiet suffering, resilience, and the complexities of aging under scrutiny. His passing was the culmination of months of physical decline, compounded by the emotional toll of confronting mortality while fiercely guarding his independence. In his final days, Reiner's family and closest friends bore witness to both his fragility and his enduring spirit. They saw the man behind the legend, someone who struggled with tasks that were once effortless, who relied on small routines for comfort, and who faced each day with a mix of determination and fatigue. Yet, despite these challenges, his personality remained intact. Humor, intelligence, and warmth shone through moments of reflection, reminding those around him of the vibrant figure he had always been. The reality of his final struggle was sobering. Friends and family described the emotional strain of trying to balance care with respect, providing support while allowing him to maintain dignity. This delicate dynamic defined the last days of his life, as Reiner insisted on living on his own terms even when his body began to fail him. It was a reminder of both the strength and vulnerability that coexist in human life, a paradox his loved ones grappled with until the very end. News of his death sent shockwaves through the industry. Fans mourned not only the loss of a creative visionary, but also the absence of a beloved public figure whose work had inspired countless people. Yet, for those who knew him personally, the grief was layered with understanding. They had seen the toll of his struggles, the weight he bore privately, and the courage it took to confront decline without surrendering control. Reiner's legacy, however, extends far beyond the circumstances of his death. He left behind a body of work that continues to influence filmmakers and audiences alike. Iconic films, memorable performances, and the mentorship of countless rising talents ensure that his impact endures. But equally important is the personal legacy he left with family and friends, a lesson in dignity, resilience, and facing life's final challenges with courage and self-respect. The truth of his passing also serves as a reminder of the often unseen battles faced by those we admire. Fame and success do not shield anyone from vulnerability. Even those who appear larger than life are human, susceptible to the same fears, frailties, and limitations as everyone else. Rob Reiner's story underscores the importance of compassion, empathy, and understanding qualities he loved. One's hope will be remembered alongside his cinematic achievements. As the world reflects on his life. The message is clear: Rob Reiner's final days were not defined solely by tragedy, but by humanity. He faced decline with as much dignity as he could summon, relying on the people who loved him most for support while maintaining the independence that had always defined him. His life and death reveal a balance of brilliance and vulnerability, courage and limitation, public achievement and private struggle. In the end, the shocking truth behind Rob Reiner's death is not a scandal or mystery. It is profoundly human. It is the story of a man who gave the world laughter, creativity, and inspiration, and who in his final days faced the most personal challenge of all with quiet courage. His legacy is a reminder that even in tragedy, there is dignity, and even in loss, there is love. Rob Reiner may have left the world, but his impact, both public and personal, remains a testament to a life lived fully, passionately, and with unwavering authenticity.